good. So my name is Yaw Osei. Um, I've been owner and I guess technical lead at Supra Academy for I don't know how long, probably around 8 or 9 years on officially. But in terms of coaching, I think this is my 22nd or 23rd year coaching. So I've done quite a bit of playing, and I think I'm getting close now in terms of my playing career, my coaching career being almost the same length. I'm not quite that old yet, but but it's getting to the point where it's almost going to be half and half. So for me, it's I've seen a lot in my journey, and I'm always excited to share what I know and learn more so I can share more with my players, right? Ultimately, because I believe if I'm only teaching them what I know, then I think I'm limiting their potential. So my goal is always to find new ways to transfer my ideas to my players. Sounds good. So yeah, no, Supra, like I said, I always tell people this is not the first version of Supra. This is probably our third and most successful version. We've been coaching kids probably since as far back as 2008 in different ways and different fashions. Ultimately, the way Supra came together is my partner and myself, Justin Sidhu. Basically, we've known each other since we were basically in high school. So, sorry, not high school, elementary school. So we came together and decided to put our heads together and build something that we thought at the time was missing in the way kids were being developed locally, because naturally we went through very similar development path, and we wanted to create something for players that didn't really exist for others. So one example is, now you hear the term professional development quite easily and loosely used everywhere. Well, when we first started, professional development was only reserved for the professional teams, right? So in terms of giving kids the same level of training, the same access to technology, the same access to equipment, those were only reserved for entities that were professional. And now you see basically everywhere you go, kids are being given professional training, professional resources, professional training gear, like everything you can imagine is now being given to players, right? Which is something that when we first started did not exist. So Supra basically was born out of that ethos, if you wanna categorize it as that. And since then, I think we've come a long way, and I would say, at least locally, we've been leaders in sort of pushing the envelope in terms of what we can offer our players to help them take that next step. I think technology is very much at the foundation of Supra. I think from my perspective, what my other job, if you want to call it, is very much a technology company. And even as a kid, I've always been fascinated with how things work and how I can make my life easier with technology. And so, I was that kid that would buy everything like that was, new, shiny. I remember when the Walkman came out, I was one of the first people to buy one. When the CD player came out, I was the first person to buy one, so I can go on. When MP3 player came out, so I've always been fascinated by technology and how technology can be married with different things, right? And so, that passion hasn't stopped. And even in soccer and my coaching, that's always been something that I've tried to bridge technology with my passion and sort of put those two together and see if I can deliver a more superior product for my players. So I always tell people we've invested in so many video technology, right? In terms of capture, right? So we started off very much using iPads when iPads were around to film. And then we went into a drone, right? And then we went into self-operated cameras like robocams. So we spend thousands and thousands of dollars trying to capture our players, because I think very early on we realized that players learn differently, right? And the ability to show players what you want them to do is much more powerful than just telling them what to do. So we invested a lot of money into capturing and getting that information. So naturally, the next step for us is insight, right? So once you have all the data, once you have all the information, one of my leaders used to say this all the time, so what, right? So you have all this information, but so what, right? Well, what are you going to do with it, right? Ultimately. So Step Out was actually an idea that Justin uncovered, I think, when he was in Europe originally. I believe he talked to one of the parents there who basically shared with us that Ajax at the time were using you guys as their video analysis. So naturally, if it's good enough for Ajax, it must be good enough for us. So Justin shared the idea with me, and then initially, I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit apprehensive because we had so much stuff, like so much, out there that we were not even using. So I was kind of like, well, why do we need to add another thing that we're not probably gonna use, type of thing. But obviously, as the more I looked into it, it just made too much sense that this was gonna cut down our workload significantly instead of like sitting there watching video, breaking down video, tagging video, doing all these things that we were already doing, but was taking up so much time. So it just made way too much sense for us to go with Step Out, and then obviously the more and more I became familiar with it, the more I fell in love with it. I've told Arijit this before. I think we are now, if you want to think about sort of like the arc of our usage in terms of where we are in that journey, I would say we're still probably in the infant stage, like where we're obviously off the ground now quite significantly, but I think we're still at that stage where we are now looking for additional ways to integrate this in our not just video, but we're looking at how do we now bring a lot of the insights that we're gaining from the application to the field, right? So in terms of impact, I would say we're still very much at the beginner stage where we're learning a lot about sort of like the benefits of it and how we can apply sort of the insights we're getting from the application to our on-field coaching. So I'll give you a very small example, and this might probably be one of your other questions. Like in terms of we've like recently, I would say actually restructured the way we are programming. We've changed our programming to sort of line up with step outs data, so that not only can we quantify sort of what we're doing on the field much closer to what step out is showing us, whereas previously it wasn't lined up. So we've changed our programming so that whatever we're doing on the field now can be quantified via what we're seeing on game day, to the point now where we've actually invested, and I was telling Regis this, we've invested in a TV that now we take to the field, right? And if you go on our social media, you'll see it there. So I'm not lying. That we've taken to the field now where we can show the players on field what we are analyzing on Step Out. Additionally, like our residency program also is using Step Out for video analysis. So rather than going in there and playing a whole entire game or telling kids watch a whole entire game, no, we're telling them just go into the Step Out app, look at these specific aspects of the game, and then we can come into the room and we can discuss it together. So very small in my like just based on like where I think this can go, but very impactful in the short term that we've had this application. Technology is a funny thing because when everything works, nobody has any complaints, right? So it's the complaints only come up like I always say that when WhatsApp or Facebook can work for 364 days out of the year, but if they have one shutdown, the whole world melts and they decide that maybe it's time to find something else, or maybe it's time to find an alternative. So if you understand technology, you understand that there will be a lot of good days, but sometimes things might just not always work perfectly. So from our experience, I would say the TMS portal and the app has been kind of like that, right? Where, 99% of the time, or even 95%, whatever percentage you want to put, it works great. And we haven't had any sort of like bad experiences where it would be like, oh no, we don't want to use this anymore because it's terrible. But obviously, once in a while there's been issues with us, like, just like the registration of players, right? Or the players register, but they can't see their games, right? And at that point, you guys have been, very helpful in sort of like getting back to us and telling us what the issue is, and how we can solve it, or how you guys can help us solve it. So, I don't think there is any issues UI wise or interface wise that, for me anyway, sort of, gets in the way of us doing what we do on the field. So from my perspective, there's always going to be improvements. There's always going to be tweaks. So at the moment, it works quite well for us. As coaches, we're very good at the general, right? And I think the mark of a good coach is the ability to go deeper, right? Into the analysis. And during the game, there's so many things happening, right? You're looking at five different things, and one of the things that obviously we miss a lot is the individual actions, right? And as coaches, we're very much, I think we're trained to see a lot of the negatives, right? So during the game, when somebody makes a bad pass, when somebody makes a bad decision, when somebody, does something bad, we inevitably catch that more so than, all the other good that happens, right? So that's coaches for you, because we're always looking to fix, right? So, ultimately what, applications like StepOut does for us is, it helps us validate sort of like what we saw, right, during the game. And then also when we get the opportunity to step away from the game without the emotions, without the sort of like the competition, we can reflect on sort of, we can reflect more in depth, sort of like what actually happened, and not just what we saw during the game. And what I would say, a lot of the times we have an idea in our heads that we saw from the game, and Step Out will either confirm it or will show us that we were actually wrong in our initial analysis or in our initial observation, right? So from my perspective, the statistics sort of supports or backs up, what I see during the game, and provides me with additional insights that I can communicate to the players so that they also understand what I see. And it's not just a subjective conversation where it's like, I think you were good, but this is why I think you were good, right? And so that's where the statistics and that's where the analysis comes in handy, is to support sort of what our initial observations are. I think similar to even us from a coaching perspective, but like I said, we're still in the process of getting the players fully integrated in this application. It's very difficult for us because we've introduced so many things to our membership that sometimes it gets really, crowded in terms of understanding which application we're using now, and is this thing going to be a 2-month application where we'll never use it again, or is this going to be a full investment, right? And so for our players, I would say they're still in the process of understanding the value of the application. I can only use sort of like our older kids as an example, where now that I've sort of showed them how the application works, you see a lot of the kids now using it, right? Going on there and trying to understand, hey, why is this game not here? Why, like, they're asking me more questions about, oh, what does this stats mean? What does this data mean? And for me, that's the best feeling, because now you understand that the kids are engaged and they want more information, right? And the more information I can provide them, then the more engaged they will be, right? So it's kind of one of those snowball effects where, I'm now having to learn the technology because the kids are asking me more questions that maybe I can't answer, which is why I'm always going to you, Regis, and say, hey, I need this document, or I need this, because I want to sound smart when I give these kids a response for their questions. So I would say that's, in the short term, that's been kind of like our success is, we're starting to see the engagement grow. In terms of like how it's, what how we're using it to develop individual players. I think we're not quite there yet, if I'm honest. I think this is probably the next phase of it, which is now where we're going to be able to develop individual learning plans based on sort of the outcomes that we're seeing and you're also seeing in your step out apps. But at the moment, we just haven't, let's just say the data is not enough to form a tangible conclusion where we can be like, okay, you need to go work on this specific aspect. So I would say probably we're about 75% there. And the hopes is that once we can get somewhere around 20 videos for the players, then now we can start to form tangible conclusions and we can say, hey, this summer you need to go and practice this, or this summer you need to go work on this. So when you come back, we can continue your journey. I sort of set a benchmark for myself that I think 20 videos will be about the goal where I think we can start to form conclusion where we can actually start bringing the parents in and using the profile, their profile. I don't even know what to call it, but their profile data. You know how you export
Yes, player profile,
the
yes.
well, yeah, where we can actually sit down with them and say, this is where your child is, and this is where we see opportunities to basically make adjustment to your development. So at the moment, we're not there as an academy, but that's where we eventually want to go. So if I'm sitting down with these kids, let's say in December, where we've had 20 plus videos basically analyzed on your games, then I think that's where we're going to bring the parents in and we're going to start showing them, hey, these are the findings that we've uncovered. I think I've already sort of said it, but I'll repeat it. Like, I guess maybe you guys don't understand I'm not going to insult you, but I'd say maybe you don't understand the impact of a program change. We haven't changed our programming since I would say probably 2000 and through sorry 2019 was the last time we changed the structure of our programming, right? And since step out, we've done that. Like we literally sat down where we said we need to do things a little bit differently because what we were doing before was not quantifiable, right? It wasn't like, it's just, we did basically things that we thought would yield maximum success, but we cannot quantify what that looked like or what that feels like or where, how we can measure that. And now we've changed our programming to the point where everything we do on the field is now measurable, right? And is measurable via some of the things that I've discussed with you, Regent, that we would like to step out to sort of like show us, right? And so not to give up too much of our secrets, but that's kind of where we are today, which is like, if you don't think that's a success story, then I don't know what else is. I think individually, our players are gonna be fine, just like previously. Without step out, we still develop players to a high level, but to
Mm-hmm.
be able to concretely or accurately actually tell players what you're doing is powerful. It's powerful, and then for us to change our programming to match that, it just shows the commitment and sort of where step out has come for us, right? So I think Regent and I, we've discussed sort of different ideas, and he's been very open to the feedbacks that I provided, and I think ultimately it's I think the missing link is the engagement piece, right? Like every piece of technology that we've used has been successful or not successful just based on the ability for us to engage the players with that
Mm-hmm.
technology. So one of the things that I think I recommended some time ago is like push notifications or nudges or whatever those types of, you want to talk about social cues, if you want to call it, where when games are loaded, can the players be notified? When there's an improvement in the stats or when there's a decrease in a specific aspect, can the players be notified via, because then all those small little things, drives engagement and drives players into the platform to use it more, right? And the more they use it, the more feedback we get, the more improvements we can offer them. So it's like a loop, right? And so from my perspective, if there's one recommendation I would provide, is just that specific aspect of it, is find ways to drive engagement for usage of the app. And I don't think it should only be reliant on, let's say, me as a coach, because there's so many things out there that I have to take care of. And if I have to go there and always remind players, hey, you step out, then I don't think it's good. So I would say my biggest feedback would be that, on top of all the stuff that we need personally as an academy that I've already discussed related, I think that the nudge feature, or the push notification, is something that everybody who is on the platform will benefit from. Sometimes it feels like I'm your only customer, honestly. That's kind of like how I feel. And I think that's the best compliment that I can provide you guys, because it's quite incredible, sort of the speed at which, I would say my responsiveness is worse than you guys. So it's
Oh, no,
it's
no, no.
yeah, so it's actually, remarkable, where it's like, oh, I take longer than you guys to respond back. That's the ultimate compliment. So for me, anybody that wants to work with Step Out is gonna get the best of you guys, and I wouldn't even hesitate to reference you guys as part of, probably the best part of the application. The application is great, but I think you guys are even better.